I think that worked. Okay. So I have this bow is a normal unenchanted bow. This is a power 5 bow. This zombie is in full Proj Prot netherite. And this arrow on the far left in my offhand is a healing 2 tipped arrow. Okay, so now I'm using a normal arrow. With the unenchanted bow, I do 0 damage, 0 damage, 1 damage. Okay. With the power 5 bow, I do 0 damage. Okay, stop lagging. 2 damage, 1 damage. Makes sense. So this is how healing arrows work, or harming arrows. They're the same thing against undead. So you'd think that a harming arrow would just add damage, but that's not how it works. What it does is it checks to see how much damage your arrow is going to do, and then it adds damage if the arrow does less than 12 damage, and it just makes up the difference so that it always does 12 damage, right? So if I have a normal arrow against this slime, that's 10 damage, 6 damage. If I use a harming arrow, it does 6 and 6. So the arrow itself does 6, and then the harming part makes up the other 6 to get 12. And if I do it like this, it's 10 and 2. So the arrow did 10, and the harming part did 2. Which is kind of useless, because with a power 5 bow, you're doing between like 15 and 25 damage. So the harming part is never going to do anything. And I can demonstrate that. So if I have my power 5 bow, which does between 15 and 25 damage, and I hit him, that's 16 damage. The harming part did literally nothing. So it's a useless arrow in this scenario. 16. Okay, they don't have enough health. 16. Right? So the harming arrow is not doing anything. But you'd think against a armored foe, it would actually be pretty useful. Because if my 25 damage arrow is being reduced to only doing 1 damage, then increasing that from 1 to 12 would be super PogChamp. You know, it's a 12x multiplier in damage. Or if it's doing like 2 to 3, that's like a 5 times multiplier in damage. Right? So, but that's not how it works, unfortunately. Right? This is doing like, okay, let's see. Normal arrow is doing, with a power 5 bow, 1 damage. 1 damage. Super low. We don't like that. But we go out of our way to get this arrow of healing to kill this guy, so this 1 damage should be increased to 12, right? 0 damage, 1 damage, 1 damage, right? It's like not working. And the reason it's not working is because it's calculating how much damage the healing aspect of the arrow should do before it takes armor into account. So it's like looking at how much damage the arrow does. It's like, oh, there's a 20 damage arrow. So the healing's not going to add, we're not going to add anything with healing because it's already over 12. Then it takes armor into account and it reduces that 20 damage arrow into a 1 damage arrow. And that's all you're doing, 1 damage, right? But what if we had our arrow do 1 damage, right? We have a super weak bow that does 1 damage only. Well, it's going to do 1 damage. It's going to see how much damage the healing part should do, 11, right? And it's going to do, okay, I have a 1 damage arrow and 11 damage healing effect. Then it applies armor, reduces the 1 to 0, and the 11 stays there. So now you have 11 damage. And we can see that if I use a weaker bow. My power 5 bow is doing 1 damage with a healing arrow. This unenchanted bow does 2 damage. Oh my god, dude. Bro, my test is all going wrong. Stay alive, sir. Okay, I need a water bottle. Oh, he's fine. I have to get another. It's whatever. So, this does 1 damage, 2 damage. This does 6 damage because it's doing less damage. The arrow from this bow is like 20 damage, so the healing effect's not adding anything, and then the 20 damage is being reduced to 1. The arrow from this bow is doing like or it's actually doing like 8 damage. So the healing effect is adding like 4. The 8 is being reduced to 0, and then the 4 stays, right? And with this, we can do something really stupid, right? So a power 5 fully charged back bow is doing about 1 damage. But if I take my unenchanted bow, okay, we're going to wait for it to stop lagging. And when I do this, 10 damage. I can max it. If I'm holding a healing arrow against a Proj Prot netherite zombie, the way to do max damage is to have an unenchanted bow and not charge it back. 11 damage. Like, what the fuck is that? Whoever designed this is a moron. This is actually the most unintuitive garbage imaginable. And I hate it, actually. So yeah, that's fun.